All right, Wes Goldberg here, Real GM Radio. I've got 15 minutes on Luka Doncic and De'Aaron Fox that I want to get to. We've seen Nico Harrison's press conference. We've seen the statements come out. We've seen the numbers. We've seen the total packages. Luka Doncic was traded over the weekend. De'Aaron Fox was traded over the weekend. The NBA trade deadline is still a couple of days away, Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. So a ton to get into, but a few things that in reading the reports, hearing the comments, talking to some people, things that aren't I got some things that haven't really been discussed all that much now. By now, you've seen the trade. You know all the moving parts. I'm not going to recap all of that for you. But I'm going to start with Luka Doncic. We'll get to De'Aaron Fox here in a second and then kind of go bigger picture on all of this and then figure out what comes next for all the teams involved here. But watch Nico Harrison's press conference before the Mavericks got wiped out in Cleveland. Not surprising at all, given the circumstances of everything. The thing that Nico Harrison kept talking about was, in the Luka Doncic trade, by acquiring Anthony Davis, they've reshaped the team to prioritize defense, and they are set up to win now and in the future. And I think that set up to win now in the future part is a really interesting thing here. I can see that, first of all, I'm going to start here. I don't understand why you trade Luka Doncic. It's stunning. It's surprising. I've never seen anything like it in all of my years being a fan of basketball, covering the league. I've never seen anything quite like this. A 25-year-old, 5-time first-team All-NBA guy, perennial MVP candidate, just getting into his prime. Yes, there's always issues about his conditioning, maybe issues about his injury history and all of these things, but this isn't an injury-prone player like Joel Embiid, for instance, or something like that, where you didn't have the proof of concept. You've been to a Western Conference Finals and an NBA Finals 2 of the last 3 years with Luka Doncic leading your team. He was a walking top 10 offense. He was an elite playmaker, an elite shot creator, an elite passer, and the kind of guy who you wait decades for to get. And they trade him in the most surprising deal I can remember. And what Nico Harrison kept pointing out was defense. Now, I'm going to try to do the thing where you put yourself in the other team's shoes. There's got to be a reason for this. I think Nico Harrison has done such a good job as a general manager for the most part in Dallas, where I think one of the most stunning parts of this trade was the fact that he did it. Given his track record as a GM, I know he's taking big risks. He traded for Kyrie Irving when nobody else would. He traded future first-round picks for PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. But that stuff worked out. It's hard to see a way where this works out. Now, the line you keep hearing right now is, well, the Mavericks must know something that we don't. They must know something that we don't, because there's no way to make sense of this otherwise. So Nico Harrison talks about defense. I could see it. Anthony Davis at the 4. You've got Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford at the 5. You're able to run out these big lineups at all times. Not only do you get 48 minutes of quality center stuff from Gafford and Lively, but you now have Anthony Davis to pair with them. You can go small with Anthony Davis at the 5. If you look at the teams that you need to beat, whether it's the Thunder, the Nuggets in the finals, potentially an historic paced offense like the Cavaliers, the Boston Celtics, where the Mavericks know firsthand what that team is capable of on the offensive end. This team had to get better defensively, and I suppose there would have been other ways to do it, but what is really the trade market for somebody like Klay Thompson if you wanted to move that piece? Not much. What's the trade market even for Kyrie Irving at this point? I don't know that you're getting a difference maker there. So I guess they looked around and was like, I guess the only way for us to get better defensively is Luka. Again, not excusing it, just trying to figure out the reasoning behind it. So they trade Luka. They get Anthony Davis. They're set up for now and the future. Okay. What does that really mean? Because they're worse now. This was a team, remember, the last time we saw Luka Doncic play on Christmas Day, strains his calf in that game, the Mavericks had looked every bit a championship contender. They had won something like 14 out of their last 17 games. They were rising up power rankings. They looked like the team that made the NBA Finals last year. It was all starting to come together, and then Luka gets hurt. So, and it's why I never took them out of my top 10 in their power rankings, despite some of their struggles with these injuries, is I saw what it looks like most recently when they're healthy, and it looks damn good. So I think the Mavericks will still be good right now. Like there's, Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, there's some good players there. I like some of the depth there, but they're not as good as what they were. So does this mean that they're going to be set up for the future then? And that's the part that I kept thinking about. And this is the thing that it's been reported out there. The contract that Luka Doncic was going to be eligible for, the Supermax contract, 5 years, $345 million. In other words, $70 million a year. And I wonder if part of this is a symptom of the new CBA, second apron rules, and the lack of flexibility that comes with all of that. Did the Mavericks choose Anthony Davis over Luka Doncic? Or did they choose flexibility over Luka Doncic? Because if you sign Luka to $70 million a year, that's the contract. That's your star player, and you're pretty much locked into that. Now, I would argue that Luka is one of those rare players who's making $70 million, where that's still maybe a bargain, given Luka's history, the historic pace that he was at, the numbers that he could put up, and everything, his talent, everything that he's capable of doing. So maybe they could have still moved him. But on the same token, like, it becomes harder to move him just because the dollar figure is so much that it becomes a lot harder to build a trade, again, especially in this new apron world. So were the Mavericks staring down the barrel of a $70 million a year contract and saying, is this the guy? Are we going to lock ourselves into the Luka Doncic experience? And I think 11 people out of 10 would have said, yep, fine with that. Sign me up. Dallas evidently said, no, we don't want to do that. Now, maybe there was intel about the injury history and his overall health and his conditioning. Maybe that reporting out there isn't even scratching the surface of the real level of concern that they had there. Perhaps. Maybe they had some sort of intel that Luka Doncic didn't want to re-sign in Dallas, and that maybe this summer he would have pulled what basically De'Aaron Fox did last year. Now, the Supermax wasn't on the table. We've never seen a player turn down the Supermax, but we never see something happen until it happens. And maybe Luka would have been the first player to say, you know what? I also don't think we're good enough defensively. I don't know. Just looks around Dallas and says, I want to play in LA. Maybe I want to go to Miami. There's whispers and everything about, maybe those being his preferred locations. Would have been shocking for him to turn down $70 million a year, 5 years, $345 million. So much money. That would have been so shocking to see him turn it down. But then again, surprises aren't new here, I suppose. I wonder if, so this is the way I'm framing it. Again, trying to understand and rationalize what it is that the Dallas Mavericks did here. If you could ask the Philadelphia 76ers right now, would you have, if you can go back in time, give you a time machine, you go back in time, you can either trade Joel Embiid a year ago, or you sign him to that Supermax extension that he got this past summer. What do? They definitely decide trade him, don't they? They definitely pick trade him. This guy is going to have missed almost as many games as he's played in a 76ers uniform. And now they're locked into this contract. There is a world where a year or two from now, and we might already be there, but I think consensus will be there in a couple of years, where Joel Embiid is on the worst contract in the league. That is that is a potential outcome here with Joel Embiid. So did the Mavericks look at the Joel Embiid situation and say, we don't want to end up in that. We don't want to end up locked into Luka Doncic at $70 million a year. Kyrie Irving, we're probably going to feel forced to give him the extension. Not that he's been great for us, but he's getting older, and that's a reality of it. Derek Lively's great, like PJ Washington's, but we don't really feel like 3 or 4 years from now our window is going to be more open. Maybe we feel like it's going to be even more closed, given the nature of all of this stuff that's going on, Luka's injury history, the cost of Luka's next contract. So I've seen it framed as they chose Anthony Davis over Luka Doncic, and that is obviously partially true, but I'm wondering if they chose flexibility over Luka Doncic, targeted the player they wanted. Now, in that the process of all of this, if you wanted out of the Luka business, why did you do it now, right before the deadline? Why did you not open it up to trade offers? Why didn't you get that second first-round pick from the Lakers? All that stuff. That's the part that I still can't figure out here. But in terms of not wanting to be in on the Luka business long term, I can at least see the logic in that part of it. And that kind of brings me to my next point here. We are seeing a pattern, and it brings me to De'Aaron Fox as well. We are seeing a pattern here in the NBA over the last year, I would say. Front offices trying to get ahead of it. Front office trying to get ahead of trade demands, trade requests. They're trying to get ahead of it. The Mavericks trade Luka Doncic before he's up for the extension, before he potentially doesn't want the extension. We heard Nico Harrison talk about that. We put the extension in front of him and then he decides what to do. Dallas wanted to get ahead of that. We saw the Sacramento Kings approach De'Aaron Fox and say, look, we see the writing on the wall. You haven't requested the trade yet, but we're going to trade you now. We're going to start listening to trade offers. So start packing. Sacramento got ahead of it. So now we're seeing these front offices try to get ahead of the trade requests. This, to me, is a direct answer to the player empowerment era, where LeBron James decided what he wanted to do, and if you were a team, you were sort of bent over the barrel, and you basically had to do whatever LeBron demanded to do. We saw Kevin Durant request trade time after time. James Harden force his way out of organizations. Front offices don't want to be in that situation anymore, because once the player requests the trade, they lose leverage. For the most part, they lose leverage. They want control over these situations. I don't know. I still want to believe that had Luka even requested the trade, Dallas probably could have gotten more out of this. But Anthony Davis is a good player, and I think that's another part that keeps getting lost in this. Anthony Davis is a good player. And understanding that if you're trading Luka Doncic, you're not getting a player of Luka Doncic's caliber. You're not getting another Luka, because Lukas are untouchable, right? You don't get a top 4 player in the league when you're trading a top 4 player. That doesn't happen, right? Jokic, Shea, Giannis, those guys are untouchable. We thought Luka was untouchable. Those guys are untouchable. So you kind of go down to the next rung in the ladder. Anthony Davis is a top 15 player in the league. He was playing like an MVP candidate in the first couple of weeks of the season. He's still putting up amazing numbers. He's a playoff performer. He's a recent champion in 2020. There's not a lot of guys who can be on first team all defense and first team all NBA, scoring 25 plus points. He's a very good basketball player. And a lot of the injury concerns, by the way, with him are behind him, where it still feels like that's very much part of the Luka Doncic experience. So Anthony Davis is a very good player. If Luka requests the trade a year from now on a $70 million a year contract, or if he says no to the contract and requests the trade a year from now, and then he starts saying, well, these are the places I want. Maybe he still ultimately ends up wanting to be in LA, whatever it might be. But are you even getting Anthony Davis back? Are you getting that kind of return back? The Mavericks decided that they wanted to get ahead of it, and they went this way. Again, I am not condoning the behavior. I am just trying to rationalize here. You see Sacramento do the same thing. I kind of hate this trade for Sacramento, but they got the guy that they wanted. They targeted Zach LaVine. They said, we have a chance to get LaVine now. LaVine might get traded somewhere else before the deadline. We've long had this infatuation with LaVine. We don't think Fox is long for here. If Fox doesn't sign the extension this summer, LaVine gets traded to Golden State or some other team before the deadline, then we've missed our guy. So you've seen in these instances, Dallas seeing something brewing long-term with Luka, potentially. Sacramento knowing that De'Aaron Fox wasn't long for there. And there was guys out there that they wanted, and they went ahead and just got them. So you see these front offices now getting ahead of it. I wonder if that's going to be a trend going forward here, is when these guys are, instead of doing this a year ahead of time, you're doing it a year and a half. Look, we gave De'Aaron Fox half a season. We couldn't fix things. We fired Mike Brown. We kind of screwed everything up here. We don't really have a choice here. Let's just trade De'Aaron Fox. With Dallas, we came off that the finals run there. According to some of the reporting and things that there was even concerns about his conditioning and his defense in the finals. We kind of gave it another year, another injury on Christmas Day. He's been in and out of the lineup. His stats are down. Let's just get out of this now. Let's get out of this now before it becomes even more of a problem. So who knows what this looks like 5 years from now? Maybe there is is it crazy to think that there's a world where Luka Doncic is the next Joel Embiid and the Mavericks look like geniuses for this? I'm just trying to figure things out. Again, I can't condone it. Issues with how the process went down and everything like that. I'm just telling you, I'm looking at trends right now, and this is a trend in the NBA. And if this is a trend, if this is not just a one-off in Sacramento and a one-off in Dallas, if this is a trend, a front office is trying to get ahead of their stars, demanding trades, a counter to player empowerment. We're taking control again. We're getting ahead of it. It's up to us. You don't quit, you're fired. Is that the trend we're seeing right now in the NBA? That, to me, is the more macro interesting part of all of this. And who's the next guy if that's really the case here. Who's the guy who's up for an extension a year or two from now, where the front office knows more than everybody else, sees the writing on the wall, and says, let's get ahead of this thing? Something worth thinking about. In terms of what's next for all these teams, the Lakers, I think they're title contenders with Luka Doncic. They got to go get a rim protector. There's probably another one or two moves that they have to make between now and the trade deadline. Doing this over the weekend with a few days left gives them the chance to do that. They still have the 2031 pick. Not sure they're going to move that. Still have Austin Reeves, who becomes a really interesting trade piece now. He was untouchable before, still on an awesome contract, still an awesome player, still important to that team, even with Luka and LeBron, I think. You always kind of want that third guy who can play, make, and do stuff, come off the bench and be a part of it, and be a little bit of insurance in case of these guys being hurt. But for the right player, he's now at least touchable. He goes from untouchable to still great value. Let's see, maybe there's something there with a carrot. I think if the Lakers get a rim protector, and the names that you hear, Nick Claxton, Clint Capella, Robert Williams III, if they can get Claxton, to me, would be a dream for them. Even Capella on a one-year flyer, sort of, if it doesn't cost you a lot, certainly you're not going to move that 2031 first for Capella. I don't even know if you move it for Claxton. Maybe you do. That to me changes things for the Lakers, because now you get a rim protector there, Dorian Finney-Smith, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, and is it Austin Reeves that's still there? Is it Dalton Connect with his spacing? Who, like a fifth guy who could space the floor a little bit? That to me is a heck of a closing lineup that could really do some damage. When you have Luka Doncic, to me, you're a title contender. Anything is possible. He is similar to Nikola Jokic in that way, where even going into the season, all the concerns I had about Denver, I couldn't write them off. I'm not making them the favorites. Oklahoma City, Boston, Cleveland, those are the favorites to me. Those are your three favorites. But contenders, Milwaukee, because they have Giannis. Denver, because they have Jokic. I think the Knicks are in that group. To me, the Lakers are right there. You've got Luka. You've got one of the best four players in the league. If you've got that, you always have a chance. This is a guy who was in the Western Conference Finals a couple years ago, in the NBA Finals last year. If you've got Luka and LeBron, obviously, you've got a chance. I think the LeBron part of this is fascinating. I wrote about it for Real GM. There is an opportunity now for Luka Doncic to maybe carry LeBron to another champion. This is another phase for LeBron's career. If he can play off the ball, being a genius cutter, lob threat for Luka Doncic, there is a world where I understand the clunkiness at first that it looks like, but if LeBron really embraces this off-ball role, this could be basketball magic, like what we could be seeing here. And if that's the case, and the Lakers kind of surprisingly go on a run here, get the right matchups in the playoffs, if LeBron is able to win a fifth ring, one closer to Michael Jordan's 6, I mean, what are we talking about in terms of his legacy? I think that's fascinating. For Dallas, again, no Luka. It's tough. They don't really have that guy, but you look in the NBA now, do you really need a top 5 guy? Like we always said, you need one of those guys, a capital D dude, a capital G guy, a superstar of superstar. You needed one of those guys to win a championship. I'm not sure that's the case anymore. Look at Boston last year. I think Jason Tatum's awesome, top 10 player. Not Luka, not Jokic. He's not that, right? He's not that. But if you have a good ensemble roster and a good defense, you can make a run. And maybe that's what Dallas decided is, okay, maybe we're more Boston than we are. Maybe we're more Boston 2024 than we are Denver 2023. And we've got Kyrie, we got Anthony Davis, we got a bunch of role players that we like. Maybe they can make a run. Again, it's crazy. They clearly, though, chose that path and the path of flexibility over Luka. The flexibility to maybe get that next Luka that doesn't have the conditioning and injury concerns. Perhaps you're always waiting. You wait years and generations and decades for a guy like Luka Doncic, and they just traded him away. I still can't fathom it. But again, just trying to understand the logic here. For the Spurs, going back to De'Aaron Fox, love the fit. De'Aaron Fox in San Antonio. They gave up nothing. They gave up 3 picks. They didn't have to give up the Hawks unprotected picks. They didn't even have to give up Devin Vassell. It felt like Stefan Castle was always untouchable, but you don't have to give up Vassell. You don't even have to give up like Keldon Johnson. You don't have to give up Harrison Barnes or Chris Paul. Like they still have all their good vets. This team can make a run now, not like a finals run, but a run to the playoffs. I think they're going to climb the Western Conference standings here over the next half of the season, the second half of the season. And they still have another move to make. They still have all these picks. They still have all these chunky contracts that they could stack up. If they're, I proposed this in our fake trades with Dan Favelli last week. I said, go get De'Aaron Fox, but then follow that up by going and getting Kevin Durant. Would that be crazy? We just saw Luka Doncic get traded, so I'm not ruling anything out. Probably not happening right now. San Antonio probably wants to see what Fox looks like and figure this out. But within the next calendar year, it feels like anything's possible for San Antonio. Sacramento, enjoy the play-in tournament. It's fine. 2 decades out of the playoffs. I have no problem if you want to stay on the treadmill of mediocrity and burn more calories. Chicago, not a whole lot here. They finally trade Levine. Levine and DeRozan reunited in Sacramento for whatever reason. Vucevic sounds like he's next. Then they tank. Big win for them. They get their own 2025 pick back in that 3-team trade. So it opens up tanking for them. Expect, the for sale sign to go on the front lawn in Chicago. Everybody is available there. It sounds like Vucevic, Lonzo Ball. Is there a contender out there that thinks that they can use him on a rental? I think all of it is fascinating. Went a little bit longer than 15 minutes here. Tons of thoughts, tons of more. We're going to be talking about the Luka Doncic trade for probably the rest of time, like decades. It feels like one of the seminal trades in NBA history. And this De'Aaron Fox trade to San Antonio shouldn't be slept on. I think this is also huge and shows that the Spurs are ready to go. And I think that's awesome. You can argue that Victor Wembanyama is on the best contract in the NBA, $12 million a year for a top 10 player with his potential and his game-changing ability on both ends. Go for it. Why not? Let him rookie quarterback thing. You see this in the NFL all the time. Guys on these rookie scale contracts at quarterback, if they're good enough to win right now, you surround them with amazing talent. The Spurs are in a situation where they say, we got a top 10 guy making $12 million a year. We can afford to overpay in some other spots on the roster for now. Maybe that's something that they do. Maybe this De'Aaron Fox is just the first step in a huge sort of surprising overhaul in San Antonio where they go for it right now. And again, I would argue, why not? Wemby's that good. Go for it. So we'll see what happens. A couple more days before the trade deadline. Fun week here. So we got this going up now. Matt Moore joins me on Tuesday. We're going to get our monthly tiers and some more NBA trade deadline intel and more reactions to all of this. And then Adam Matas from DNVR Sports is going to join me later in the week to react winners and losers of the NBA trade deadline. Subscribe to Real GM Radio on YouTube, our brand new YouTube page. Please hit the subscribe button over there. Make sure you follow us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll talk to you later in the week.